Hey guys! Tonight we're drifting gently into a world that smells faintly of shag carpet, prescription pads, and optimism. 1970s America. At the exact moment everyone decided the solution to stress was a tiny pill and a deep sigh of relief. Not the disco ball, cocaine on a mirror version of the 70s you see in movies. We're talking about the quieter revolution, the one that happened in doctors' offices, suburban kitchens, and purses the size of small suitcases. Tonight's story is about benzodiazepines, specifically Valium, the drug that promised calm, delivered naps, and accidentally became America's emotional support tablet. So before we begin, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this sort of thing. No pressure. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Somehow it's always late, you're always tired, and history always feels oddly personal at this hour. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that comforting white noise, get comfortable, and let your shoulders drop about an inch. You've earned it. Let's pause for a moment and ask some important questions. Have you ever wondered how an entire country got mildly sedated on purpose? Why doctors in the 1960s and 70s were handing out Valium like it was emotional chapstick? What did it feel like to be a stressed-out office worker, a bored housewife, or a nervous college student when science finally said, "Don't worry, we've got something for that"? How did anxiety become a medical condition instead of just your personality? And how did a drug meant for short-term relief quietly move in and start paying rent in millions of lives? And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in America circa 1971. The coffee is weak, the news is stressful, the couch is upholstered in something scratchy, and somewhere in your house is a small orange bottle promising everything is going to be okay. Good luck. You open your eyes in a country that's technically doing great, but emotionally not so much. The war footage is still on TV, inflation is nibbling at everyone's paycheck, and the idea of self-care currently means not yelling at your kids before noon. You feel tense, but nobody calls it anxiety yet. You're just high-strung. Fortunately, modern medicine has opinions about that. You lie there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, which is either popcorn-textured or aggressively beige. The radio in the next room murmurs about troop movements, gas prices, and something vaguely ominous involving interest rates. Somewhere outside, a lawnmower starts up at a deeply inconsiderate hour. Your shoulders are already tight, like they've been bracing for impact since 1964. This is America in the early 1970s. On paper, things are fine. Suburbs are expanding, televisions are getting bigger, and refrigerators are fully stocked with gelatin-based experiments. But under the surface, everyone is a little on edge. The Cold War hasn't chilled out, Vietnam is still dragging on, cities feel tense, trust in institutions is wobbling, and no one has taught you how to process any of this emotionally. So instead you internalize it. You get out of bed, already tired. Sleep didn't quite do its job last night. It rarely does anymore. You brush your teeth while mentally rehearsing conversations that will never happen. You worry about money, about your kids, about whether you said something weird at dinner 3 years ago. This all feels normal. Everyone you know feels like this. You just don't talk about it. Anxiety, at this point, is not a condition. It's a personality trait. You're nervous. You're excitable. You're the worrying type. Maybe you're just sensitive. Maybe you need to relax. Maybe you should calm down. People say that a lot, and it has never once worked. You head into the kitchen. Coffee brews, weak but determined. The morning newspaper sits on the table like a personal attack. Headlines are loud, urgent, and deeply unconcerned with your cortisol levels. You skim anyway, because being informed feels responsible, even when it makes your chest feel tight. Your body hums with low-grade tension, jaw clenched, stomach uneasy. A constant feeling that something is about to go wrong, though nothing specific ever does. There's no language for this yet, no wellness apps, no breathing exercises narrated by someone with a soothing voice. Just grit, and maybe a cigarette. This is the emotional baseline. Everyone is carrying it. At work, at home, in traffic. You see it in the way people snap over small things, or laugh a little too loudly, or drink one more cocktail than planned. The stress has nowhere to go. It just lives in your muscles. Doctors notice this. Patients come in complaining of headaches, insomnia, vague aches, nerves. They can't quite explain what's wrong, just that they don't feel right. The exam rooms fill with people who are physically fine, but mentally frayed around the edges. And medicine, being medicine, wants to help, or at least do something. You don't know it yet, but you're standing at the edge of a pharmaceutical turning point. A moment when everyday unease will stop being treated as an unfortunate side effect of modern life and start being treated as a solvable problem, something measurable, prescribable. For now, though, you finish your coffee, already feeling behind. You put on your shoes, grab your keys, and step into a world that expects you to function normally while quietly unraveling inside. You take a deep breath. It doesn't help much, but help is coming. In a small orange bottle, with a label that promises calm. Before Valium ever slips into your medicine cabinet, humanity has been trying, desperately and creatively, to calm down for thousands of years. You are not special in your anxiety. You are simply the latest model in a very long line of stressed out humans staring into the middle distance and thinking, I cannot live like this. For most of history, the go-to solution is alcohol. Wine, beer, gin, whatever is available, and fermented enough to blur the edges of existence. It works briefly. You feel warm, loose, philosophical. Then you feel loud, then sad, then sick. Then you wake up with a headache that feels like punishment for having feelings in the first place. Not ideal. If alcohol doesn't do the trick, or if you'd prefer something that feels more medical, there are barbiturates. These are popular in the early 20th century and are very effective at calming you down, mostly by turning your brain's dimmer switch way too far to the left. They don't gently relax you. They knock you out like a heavy curtain dropping in the middle of a sentence. Barbiturates are powerful, unpredictable, and extremely unforgiving. The difference between relaxed and dangerously unconscious is uncomfortably small. Doctors know this. Pharmacists know this. Patients, unfortunately, often find out the hard way. Accidental overdoses are common. Mixing them with alcohol is a spectacularly bad idea. But for a while, this is what's available, so everyone just sort of squints and hopes for the best. Then there's the non-chemical approach, emotional restraint, the stiff upper lip. You are expected to endure stress quietly, preferably without burdening anyone else. Men are told to toughen up. Women are told they're imagining things. Children are told to behave. No one is taught what to do when their thoughts won't stop racing at 3 a.m. If you're lucky, you find small coping rituals. A walk, a cigarette, a cup of tea. If you're unlucky, you're labelled difficult or unstable and quietly shuffled aside. Mental health at this point is either invisible or terrifying. Treatment often means institutions, not conversations. By the mid-20th century, doctors are tired of choosing between knocking patients out or telling them to just deal with it. There's a growing sense that there must be a middle ground, something that calms without erasing, something that helps people function instead of flattening them. This is where science starts to perk up. Pharmaceutical research accelerates after World War II. Laboratories hum with activity. Chemists in white coats tinker with molecules, trying to create drugs that are more precise, more targeted, more civilized. The goal is control, predictability. A medication that doesn't feel like playing roulette with consciousness. You don't see this happening, of course. You're just living your life, clenching your jaw, sleeping poorly, assuming everyone feels like this. But behind the scenes, researchers are inching closer to something new. A class of drugs that won't sedate you into oblivion, but will gently tell your nervous system to take a seat. The idea is revolutionary. What if anxiety itself could be treated directly, not masked, not drowned, not ignored, just eased? It's a seductive idea, one that promises relief without consequences, calm without cost, a way to stay awake, productive, and emotionally manageable in a world that's anything but. And when that idea finally takes shape in a tiny pill, it's going to feel like a miracle. Because compared to what came before, it kind of is. You don't see the moment it happens, but somewhere in a laboratory in the late 1950s, a chemist accidentally stumbles onto something that will eventually end up in your purse, your desk drawer, or your bathroom cabinet. This is not a dramatic lightning bolt discovery. There is no swelling music. It's more like a quiet, "Oh, that's interesting. The drug is part of a new class called Benzodiazepines." Even the name sounds reassuringly technical, like it definitely went to medical school. These compounds behave differently from the heavy-handed sedatives of the past. They don't slam your brain into unconsciousness. Instead, they whisper. Here's what's happening inside you, explained in the gentlest possible terms. Your brain has an internal calming system, and benzodiazepines politely boost it. They enhance the effect of a neurotransmitter called GABA, which is basically your nervous system's "it's okay, relax" signal. Think of GABA as the brake pedal for your thoughts. Benzodiazepines don't hit the brakes for you, they just make them more responsive. To doctors, this feels like the future. Patients who take early benzodiazepines become less anxious without becoming comatose. Muscles relax, panic quiets, sleep improves, and most importantly, people remain awake, coherent, and capable of holding a conversation without drooling onto the exam room floor. This is a big upgrade. In medical journals, the language is cautious but optimistic. These drugs appear safer than barbiturates. Overdoses are less common. The margin between helpful and harmful is wider. Compared to what doctors have been working with, this feels downright humane. You don't feel drugged. You feel normal, or at least closer to what you imagine normal people feel like all the time. Your thoughts stop sprinting. Your chest loosens. That low-level sense of doom fades into the background, like a radio finally turned down. Doctors like this very much. They begin prescribing benzodiazepines for anxiety, insomnia, muscle spasms, pre-surgery nerves, post-surgery recovery, and basically anything involving the word tension. Nervous patient? Benzodiazepine. Can't sleep? Benzodiazepine. Feeling vaguely unsettled by existence? You guessed it. From a physician's perspective, this is a dream scenario. Patients feel better quickly. There's minimal fuss. No long emotional conversations required. No digging into childhood trauma or existential dread. Just a prescription, a follow-up appointment, and a satisfied nod. And from your perspective, it feels like someone finally handed you instructions for operating your own nervous system. You take the pill, and for once nothing dramatic happens. No rush, no fog. Just a subtle softening, like the world has rounded its sharp edges. You can still think. You can still work. You can still worry. But it's quieter now, like the volume knob has been turned from 10 down to 4. This is important because drugs that are too obvious tend to scare people. Drugs that quietly improve your day slip right into your routine. The lab coats are thrilled. The doctors are impressed. The early studies look good. And nobody is particularly interested in what might happen after months or years of regular use, because right now the problem seems solved. For the first time, anxiety feels optional, and that is a very powerful promise. At some point, the molecule stops being just a molecule and starts being a character. Diazepam becomes Valium, and this is not an accident. The name is carefully chosen to sound smooth, stable, and vaguely European, like it owns a very nice sweater. It doesn't sound harsh. It doesn't sound chemical. It sounds like something you could trust. You don't take a benzodiazepine. You take Valium. This matters more than anyone realizes at first, because once a drug has a friendly name, it stops feeling like an intervention and starts feeling like a companion. Valium isn't something you brace yourself for, it's something you reach for. Pharmaceutical advertising in the 1960s and early 70s is confident, polished, and completely unbothered by subtlety. Ads aimed at doctors show calm, well-dressed people moving through their days with serene smiles. The implication is clear. Life is stressful, but it doesn't have to show on your face. Valium is marketed as modern medicine's answer to modern life. Fast-paced, demanding, noisy life. The kind that makes your shoulders creep up toward your ears without permission. This pill doesn't change your circumstances. It changes how much you mind them, and it works. You notice that after taking Valium, the constant inner narration softens. That voice listing everything that could go wrong takes a break. You're still yourself, just easier to be around, including for you. Doctors begin prescribing Valium enthusiastically. It's not just effective, it's versatile. Anxiety, insomnia, muscle tension, back pain, pre-surgical jitters, post-surgical recovery. It fits neatly into almost any complaint involving discomfort or distress. It becomes the Swiss Army knife of calm. By the late 1960s and into the 1970s, Valium is everywhere. It's in hospitals. It's in family medicine practices. It's in psychiatry offices. It's written on prescription pads with a casual flick of the wrist. No one whispers about it. There's no stigma yet. This is medicine doing its job. Culturally, Valium slides in with remarkable ease. It's mentioned in magazines as a helpful aid for busy lives. It appears in song lyrics and jokes, shorthand for stress relief. The phrase "take a Valium" becomes a gentle insult, meaning relax, calm down, unclench. The drug develops a personality in the public imagination. Valium is not dangerous. It's not rebellious. It's not for people on the edge. It's for people who are responsible, overwhelmed, and trying their best. It's for people who just need a little help getting through the day without snapping at strangers. You might take it before a big meeting, or after a tense afternoon, or just because the day feels heavy. The pill doesn't demand attention. It doesn't announce itself. It just quietly smooths things over. And because it's so unobtrusive, so polite in its effects, it starts to feel harmless, like a vitamin, like a cup of tea, like something you could take indefinitely without consequence. After all, you're not chasing a high, you're chasing peace. And Valium, with its calm name and softer touch, seems more than happy to provide it. You sit on the edge of an exam table covered in crinkly paper, swinging your feet slightly, trying not to think about the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The room smells faintly of disinfectant and old magazines. Your doctor flips through your chart, pen poised, expression practiced, and reassuring. You explain that you're tired, that you don't sleep well, that your nerves feel shot. You're not sure why. Nothing is technically wrong. You just feel tense, wired, like your body is always waiting for bad news. The doctor nods. This is familiar territory. There's no long interrogation about your childhood, no deep dive into your emotional landscape. Mental health care at this point is efficient. Symptoms in, prescription out. The goal is functionality. You have a job, a family, responsibilities. You don't have time to unravel. So the doctor reaches for the pad. Valium is written in neat, confident letters, a low dose. Take as needed. Those 3 words do a lot of work. As needed could mean occasionally. It could mean daily. It could mean whenever life feels a bit too loud, which, if we're being honest, is often. You're told it's safe, effective, well tolerated, much safer than the older sedatives. The doctor might even say it's non-habit forming, or at least not something to worry about at this dosage. You trust this. Why wouldn't you? This person went to medical school. You just came in because your shoulders won't relax. You leave with a small slip of paper and a sense of relief that's already starting to work, placebo or not. There's something deeply comforting about having a solution in your pocket. Even if you don't take the pill right away, knowing it's there changes how the world feels. At the pharmacy, the prescription is filled without comment. No raised eyebrows, no warnings delivered with gravity. The pharmacist slides the bottle across the counter like it's aspirin, orange plastic, white label. Your name printed neatly, officially. This becomes routine. Doctors across the country are doing the same thing day after day. Patients come in with vague complaints, nerves, tension, insomnia, stress, and leave with the same answer. It's not laziness, it's the medical culture of the time. If something works, you use it, and Valium works. The doctor's office, quietly and unintentionally, becomes a calm factory. Anxiety is processed efficiently, output is steady. Everyone involved feels like they're doing the right thing. Follow-up visits are brief. How are you feeling? Better. Sleeping? Yes. Any side effects? Not really. Great. Same prescription. Maybe a refill. No one is charting emotional dependency. No one is tracking how long patients stay on it. Long-term studies are limited. The urgency to relieve suffering outweighs the curiosity about future consequences. And from your point of view, the system is helping. You feel more like yourself, or at least the version of yourself that can get through the day without wanting to lie down on the floor and stare at the ceiling. You take the pill, life gets quieter, and everyone moves on. This is how Valium spreads. Not through chaos or recklessness, but through trust, through routine, through thousands of small, reasonable decisions made in softly lit exam rooms. Calm, it turns out, is very easy to mass produce. Something subtle but enormous happens once Valium becomes routine. Your feelings, those tight, buzzing, uncomfortable sensations you've been carrying around, officially cross the border from just life into treatable condition. Anxiety, whether anyone uses the word yet or not, gets a medical home. This is strangely comforting. When something has a name, it feels less like a personal failure. You're not weak, you're not dramatic, you're not failing at adulthood. You're experiencing symptoms, and symptoms have solutions. You start to notice how often this language comes up. Nervous tension, stress reaction, mild anxiety. These phrases appear in charts, conversations, and casual explanations. They're tidy, clinical. They shrink big, messy feelings into manageable categories. Doctors appreciate this. It gives structure to something that used to feel vague and uncooperative. And you appreciate it too, because it means you don't have to explain yourself very much. You don't have to justify why you feel the way you do. The prescription does that for you. At work, you don't say you're overwhelmed by the constant pressure to perform while pretending everything is fine. You say you're on something for your nerves. People nod. That makes sense. Conversation over. At home, you don't articulate the slow burn of frustration, loneliness, or exhaustion. You just take your pill and feel less reactive, less raw. The edges smooth out, and the feelings that used to spill over stay neatly contained. This is a big cultural shift. Emotional discomfort becomes something external to you, something that happens to you, something that can be managed chemically. It's empowering in one sense. It's also distancing. You learn to treat your inner life like a mechanical problem, and the medical system reinforces this. There are codes, guidelines, dosage charts. Anxiety fits neatly into the logic of modern medicine. It's measurable by how much better you feel after taking something. You may notice that nobody asks many follow-up questions about why you're anxious. The cause is less important than the outcome. Are you functioning? Are you sleeping? Are you less distressed? Good. That's success. This works beautifully in the short term. The relief is real. The validation is real. For the first time, your discomfort feels legitimate and addressable. But there's a quiet trade-off happening. By medicalizing anxiety, the culture also narrows the range of acceptable emotional experience. Feeling bad becomes something to fix, not explore. Unhappiness becomes an interruption, not a signal. You don't think about this at the time. Why would you? You're just grateful that the constant tension has eased, that your chest isn't tight all the time, that you can get through the grocery store without feeling overwhelmed by cereal choices and fluorescent lighting. Anxiety is no longer a shadow you endure. It's a condition you manage. And management in this era looks a lot like a small pill taken with a sip of water once or twice a day as needed. It feels responsible. It feels modern. It feels like progress. At home, Valium lives quietly in your medicine cabinet, sandwiched between aspirin, cough syrup, and an emergency tube of Neosporin. It's a small orange bottle with a white label and instructions that feel almost ceremonial. Take as needed. The simplicity is soothing. Life in the 1970s doesn't offer much else that is simple. You might reach for it after lunch, when the phone has rung 15 times and the neighbour's dog is practicing its yodeling skills. Or before dinner, when you realise the stove timer and your patience have both run out. Sometimes it's just sitting there on the counter, waiting like a polite friend who won't intrude unless asked. You notice the subtle shifts almost immediately. The tension in your shoulders eases. Thoughts that used to spin like a washing machine on extra spin slow to a gentle rinse. Worries that normally feel like rocks in your chest now settle into pebbles at the bottom of a creek. You can move through the day with a softness that was previously unimaginable. Family life also adjusts. Your children don't notice the difference in you, but your spouse might. They comment on your calmer demeanour, the fact that you didn't shout when someone spilled orange juice. It's like discovering a new superpower. Emotional invisibility without pretending. The ritual becomes comforting. The act of opening the cabinet, shaking the bottle, and taking a pill is a small, deliberate gesture of control in a world that feels relentlessly chaotic. You sip water, swallow, and let minutes stretch out. A small sigh might escape, unnoticed, as the drug begins to do its quiet work. Neighbours and friends begin to associate calmness with modern life. The suburban ideal of control, efficiency, and polished appearances gets a chemical ally. Housewives juggling multiple responsibilities, office workers handling the constant push for productivity, and students trying to stay awake during lectures all find solace in that tiny capsule. You start to notice the culture shifting too. Valium is mentioned casually in magazines and on TV. Feeling frazzled? An ad might ask? Take a Valium. It's no longer just a medicine, it's a lifestyle accessory. a nod to modernity, competence, and emotional resilience. Yet while the pill quiets the surface, life doesn't completely change. The bills still arrive. Traffic is still awful. The neighbour's dog continues to yodel. But for those hours after a dose, the world feels just a touch gentler. Your reactions are tempered. The daily noise becomes background music. Minor irritations slide off. And in this quiet, the small victories accumulate. You can sit at the kitchen table without feeling that gnawing tension. You can read the newspaper without your hands trembling. You can even enjoy a meal without counting every potential disaster that might occur in the next 10 minutes. Valium is discreet, unassuming, and very effective at creating a gentle buffer between you and the chaos. Life hasn't stopped happening. The world hasn't become magically less stressful. But you, at least, have found a little breathing room. A small, calm corner in the middle of suburban turbulence. For a moment, that's enough. If you're a woman in the 1970s, Valium often finds its way into your life in the form of a quiet suggestion from a doctor, a well-meaning friend, or even the back pages of a magazine. Nervousness, irritability, sleepless nights, these aren't just human experiences, they are culturally amplified signals that something must be fixed, and Valium is framed as the polite modern solution. You wake in the morning to a kitchen that never stops buzzing, breakfast to make, laundry to fold, kids to dress, bills to sort. Everything is urgent, but no one gives you permission to admit that it's exhausting. Stress in this context is invisible and permanent, and it's yours to manage. You open the medicine cabinet, find the small orange bottle, and take your dose. Instantly, or gradually, softly, you feel the familiar edges of tension blur. Your thoughts slow down just enough to let you plan the day without imagining worst-case scenarios at every turn. The constant hum of anxiety, should the children eat the wrong cereal, spill something, or fail to thrive socially, softens. You can breathe without guilt, at least for a little while. Valium doesn't solve the endless to-do lists. It doesn't magically organise the house, pacify the baby, or make dinner on time. It does something subtler. It lets you tolerate the chaos without losing yourself entirely. You still function. You still manage. You just do it with a calmer, softer edge. Society, meanwhile, quietly reinforces the idea that the problem is internal. Stress is not structural, it's personal. Mothers are responsible for maintaining the emotional climate of the home. A few pills in the medicine cabinet is a polite, socially acceptable way to meet that expectation. You're not broken, you're just nervous. And nervousness can be managed, chemically if necessary. Outside the home, the effect is cultural too. Women talk about Valium in whispers at bridge clubs or lunch tables. It's discreet, almost conspiratorial. The pill becomes a secret handshake of modern life, a way to survive expectations that are both visible and invisible, pressing down like a heavy quilt on shoulders already carrying too much. You notice subtle social pressures around the drug. A calm, well-composed woman is admired. Taking Valium allows you to appear composed while carrying an invisible load that no one else notices. In this sense, the pill is a shield, a gentle buffer against the relentless scrutiny of polite society. And yet, it's not a cure. Tension always returns. The day is still long, the expectations still high, the emotional labour relentless. Valium merely provides the space to meet those expectations without snapping, to smile politely when someone criticises dinner, to answer the phone without clenching your teeth, to sit through PTA meetings without planning a dramatic escape. In this way, Valium becomes part of the rhythm of life, a quiet, stabilising presence in a world that demands both perfection and invisibility. It doesn't change the weight of responsibility, but it softens the edges just enough for survival. For mothers, wives, and anyone navigating these expectations, that is already a profound relief. If you're a man, or anyone, staring down fluorescent lights, ringing phones, and deadlines that multiply like rabbits, Valium becomes an unspoken ally in the 1970s office. You arrive at work already tense from commuting, coffee-fueled stress, and a vague existential dread, and Valium is the little buffer that makes the rest tolerable. You sit at your desk, a beige cubicle fortress lined with paperwork, and feel the familiar edge around your thoughts. Meetings loom like mini-storms. Bosses' questions sound louder than they are. Phones ring incessantly, their shrill tones hammering against your brain. It's all perfectly normal and completely overwhelming at the same time. You take your pill quietly, maybe after lunch, maybe in a bathroom stall. The effect isn't dramatic. There's no euphoric rush. There's just space. The buzzing in your head softens. The emails, the memos, the endless paperclip mountains. You can handle them now. They still exist, but they don't loom. Colleagues notice the difference. You're calmer, less likely to snap when someone steals your stapler or criticizes your report. Meetings are survivable. Lunchtime conversations feel lighter. The office itself doesn't change, but your perception does. And in a world where perception is everything, that counts for a lot. Valium also grants a kind of social invisibility. You can observe the chaos without being pulled into it. Co-workers may be panicking over deadlines, filing cabinets, or coffee machine malfunctions. You, on the other hand, move through it with quiet efficiency, the internal chatter dampened. The world is still stressful, but it's no longer unbearable. There's a subtle irony here. The pill that helps you conform, stay productive, and appear competent also softens the parts of you that might resist pointless memos or bureaucratic absurdities. It's a coping mechanism, yes, but also a mild sedative for the soul. A gentle nudge to accept life as it is, one day at a time, one meeting at a time. And the culture reinforces it. The 1970s office is not a place for vulnerability or emotional nuance. You can't cry at your desk, and you certainly can't say, "I'm anxious." But taking a small pill in private, well, that's practical, that's modern, that's responsible. For weeks, months, even years, the rhythm sets in. Work is a sequence of tasks, meetings, and phone calls, softened at the edges by your quiet chemical companion. Stress still exists, of course. The printer still jams, the boss still sighs, but the crushing edge has dulled, replaced by a tolerable hum. Life is still complicated. You still have obligations. But somehow, thanks to this small orange bottle, you feel like you might just survive them. And survival, in a world designed to fray nerves at every corner, is nothing to underestimate. By the early 1970s, Valium isn't just a prescription. It's a social statement. It slides quietly into American life. No fanfare necessary. People mention it in passing. Magazines reference it as a modern aid for busy women and stressed men. Television jokes about it in whispered tones. The pill becomes shorthand for sophistication, composure, and the capacity to survive life without visibly unraveling. You might hear it casually in conversation. "I had a rough morning. Thank God for Valium." It's the polite way to admit stress without sounding weak. No one judges because stress is universal. Everyone knows what it feels like to be on edge. And everyone knows how much harder it is to pretend otherwise. Valium's influence even creeps into popular culture. Song lyrics hint at it. TV sitcoms joke about it. Movies reference it. It's a part of the zeitgeist, a symbol of a decade trying desperately to manage the rapid pace of life, the political chaos, and the ever-present hum of existential unease. The drug's popularity reflects broader societal shifts. Anxiety is no longer invisible. It's recognized, treated, and even lightly celebrated when managed effectively. Calm becomes aspirational. Composure is admired. People begin to equate the ability to remain unflustered with competence, modernity, and emotional sophistication. And Valium, discreet and polite, is the tool that makes it possible. At home, in offices, in suburban kitchens, Valium quietly reinforces social expectations. Mothers juggle responsibilities with fewer visible cracks. Office workers navigate chaos without snapping. Students survive exams without panicking. And the culture nods approvingly. Calm is stylish. Composure is valued. Anxiety is something to be managed, preferably chemically, in the most civilized way possible. You take a moment to notice the subtle effect on your own life. The tension that once defined your mornings is less rigid. Conversations that would have spiraled into irritation now glide by. Even minor inconveniences, the spilled coffee, the stuck elevator, the missing report, feel like background noise instead of personal crises. And yet, there's a peculiar beauty in the quietness. Life continues. Challenges persist. Responsibilities pile up. But Valium allows you to float above them just enough to maintain dignity, to remain productive, to meet expectations without collapsing inwardly. It's a delicate balance, and one that millions of Americans come to rely on. Calm, once elusive, is now portable, discreet, and socially acceptable. It's no longer a private struggle. It's a quietly shared cultural value, symbolized by a small orange bottle that promises more than just relief. It promises a version of yourself that can survive the day without snapping, shouting, or fleeing to the nearest open field. In this sense, the 1970s are softly numbed, socially polished, and chemically assisted. And you, with your Valium, are right in the middle of it, floating just above the hum of anxiety like a very small, very calm balloon. By the mid-1970s, Valium has become astonishingly common. Doctors write millions of prescriptions every year, and the orange pill bottles pile up quietly in medicine cabinets across the country. It's almost routine, an unremarkable part of daily life, and no one seems particularly worried. If anything, the absence of concern is part of the appeal. You notice it in your own experience. Your doctor barely glances at the prescription pad before scribbling out a refill. The process feels seamless, efficient, normal. The instructions are simple. Take as needed, don't exceed the dose, and life goes on. There's no lecture about long-term effects, no hint of alarm. Just a quiet understanding that modern life is stressful, and here is a gentle, scientifically approved way to cope. Meanwhile, the prescription rate keeps climbing. Doctors see a problem that affects millions. Restless nights, jittery nerves, mild panic, the constant hum of low-grade stress. And the solution seems effective, discreet, and low risk. Why hesitate? Each prescription fills the gaps of life that nobody wants to admit exist. The invisible weight of responsibility, the unspoken pressures, the daily grind that chips away at calm. Patients benefit immediately, and society, at least superficially, approves. A calmer workforce is a more productive workforce. A more relaxed populace is easier to manage culturally, politically, and socially. And since the side effects are subtle, the benefit seems obvious. Anxiety and tension that once ran wild are now measurable, manageable, and chemically softened. Valium becomes not just medicine, but a quiet ritual. People take it with morning coffee, after lunch, or before bed. Some don't even need to take it. They find comfort in knowing it's there, waiting. Its presence in the household is reassuring, like a small, polite guardian watching over the frazzled and exhausted. And despite the massive increase in prescriptions, no one raises an eyebrow, no widespread alarm. The drug is effective, culturally accepted, and professionally endorsed. The narrative is simple. Modern problems require modern solutions, and Valium works. It's not dramatic, it's not flashy, it's just calming. And in a world full of subtle anxieties, that is more than enough. This period is defined by quiet efficiency, lives made tolerable, routines maintained, nerves soothed, all through a small orange capsule. America is subtly changing, one prescription at a time, and the nation's collective tension is softening in the most inconspicuous way imaginable. You take the pill, and at first nothing seems to happen. There's no sudden euphoria, no dramatic haze, no immediate transformation into a meditative guru. Instead, the change is slow, subtle, and almost imperceptible, like the gentle dimming of a light in a familiar room. Within minutes, you notice the first effects. Your muscles, tight all morning and clenched from invisible tension, begin to relax. Shoulders drop, jaw loosens, hands stop fidgeting. It's not a collapse into sleep, but a quiet softening, as if the world has moved a few inches further away from you and you've been allowed some breathing room. Thoughts that normally sprint across your mind at reckless speed start pacing politely. Anxiety, once an insistent background hum, retreats to a quieter corner. Your inner monologue, the endless what ifs and did I remember to, slows. The noise is still there, but it's manageable, like tuning an overly loud radio down just enough to hear the music without pain. Your perception of the day shifts. Meetings feel less menacing. Traffic, though unchanged, is tolerable. The dishes piled in the sink, the bills on the counter, the endless responsibilities. They exist, but they no longer claw at your nerves. You're present enough to function, but not overwhelmed. Calm is no longer aspirational. It is physically tangible, flowing through your limbs, softening your chest, lightening the weight of anticipation. Sleep becomes easier to approach too. If taken at night, the edges of your worry no longer jab at you as you climb into bed. Thoughts drift instead of crashing. Your body feels willing to rest, even after a long day. And when morning comes, tension is less likely to greet you immediately, giving you a small, stolen sense of control before the world resumes its usual chaos. This is the genius and danger of Valium. It doesn't sedate you like older drugs. It doesn't obliterate personality or awareness. It simply smooths life's sharp corners. It offers a subtle buffer, a protective layer against the relentless pressures of daily existence. Relief is real, but quiet. It's almost invisible to outsiders, yet profoundly tangible for you. And that's part of why it becomes so widely embraced. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scream drug. It quietly lets you carry on. Function, survive, even thrive in a small domestic or professional sense. It gives you the freedom to interact with life without constant internal friction, to exist in a world that can often feel abrasive without feeling like a disaster waiting to happen. For millions of Americans in the 1970s, this gentle easing of tension feels revolutionary. It's not dramatic, but it works. It's not flashy, but it lasts long enough to matter. And in a country collectively on edge, Valium becomes more than medication. It becomes a way to live without constantly bracing for impact. By the mid-1970s, Valium isn't just a medicine. It's a quietly pervasive presence in American life, found in suburban homes, urban apartments, office drawers, and hospital medicine cabinets alike. It's unobtrusive, almost invisible, but somehow everyone knows it's there. Its popularity is astonishing, and yet few people talk openly about it. You notice it in casual conversation. Friends mention it in passing. I'm a little on edge. Thank goodness for Valium. Neighbours discuss it as a polite shorthand for handling the pressures of daily life. Housewives, teachers, and office workers all have access to it. It's the 1970s version of a secret handshake, a small capsule that signals competence, modernity, and emotional management. Pharmacies keep up with the demand. Bottles slide off the shelves almost faster than they can be stocked. The orange and white capsules sit quietly on counters, promising calm for anyone who takes them. It's remarkable how unremarkable this has become. You don't see the frenzy that surrounds some other medications. Instead, there is a quiet acceptance, a tacit understanding that a little chemical assistance is part of life now. The cultural fascination is subtle but present. Magazines feature it alongside recipes and home decor. Advertisements suggest it as a solution to tension, sleeplessness, and the general friction of modern living. Even popular culture references it, often in jokes, often whispered, as though everyone knows someone who takes it, or has thought about it themselves. And yet, for all this prevalence, the long-term consequences remain largely invisible. Studies are limited, and public discussion is minimal. People enjoy the relief without asking too many questions. The relief is immediate, the consequences distant, and the convenience irresistible. It's easier to reach for the pill than to unpack the social, emotional, or structural sources of stress. You take it and notice the effect instantly. A softening of tension, a quieting of the mind, a relaxation of muscles that have been habitually tight. Your shoulders drop, your chest eases, and thoughts that once ran rampant slow to a manageable pace. The world is still demanding, still stressful, but it feels quieter, smoother, doable. In homes across the nation, this is happening simultaneously. Millions of Americans are quietly slipping Valium into their daily lives. They don't discuss it. They don't boast about it. They simply experience the relief, the gentle smoothing of anxiety, and go about their routines. It is a discreet revolution, a chemical softening of the edges of daily existence. And yet, as normal as it feels, this quiet ubiquity carries a hidden weight. Dependency is not yet a public concern, but the groundwork is laid. People begin to rely on the pill, not as a luxury, but as a routine crutch to navigate the emotional landscape of modern life. For now, the orange bottle remains a silent ally, promising calm, efficiency, and survival in a world that never seems to slow down. By the early 1970s, Valium isn't just a medicine prescribed by doctors, it's a cultural icon, quietly marketed as the solution to modern life's relentless pressures. You flip through glossy magazines or watch television, and there it is. The serene, well-dressed individual smiling gently, suggesting that inner peace is just a small pill away. Calm is no longer something you achieve through meditation or patience, it can be bought. The advertisements are carefully crafted. Women are shown balancing home, family, and social obligations with effortless grace, while the small orange pill rests unobtrusively nearby, implying that composure can be chemically assisted without anyone noticing. Men, too, are portrayed as relaxed, competent, and fully functional, even amidst the demands of work and societal expectations. The message is simple. Life is stressful, but you don't have to show it. You notice how subtly this changes perception. Valium is framed as a modern, sophisticated solution. It's not dramatic. It doesn't promise euphoria or escape. It promises functionality, tranquility, and reliability. And for a society struggling with rapid cultural shifts, the Vietnam War, political scandals, inflation, it feels like a miracle of civility. Doctors, pharmacies, and advertisers form a quiet ecosystem. Each reinforces the other. The doctor prescribes, the pharmacist dispenses, the advertisement normalizes, and you, The patient or consumer internalize it. Calm is accessible, acceptable, and desirable. The orange capsule becomes a symbol of responsible coping, a badge of civilized life. Culturally, this advertising softens the stigma surrounding mental health. Feeling anxious or stressed is no longer a moral failing. It's a treatable, manageable aspect of life. Valium becomes shorthand for modernity, a small, polite intervention for the pressures that everyone experiences but no one talks about openly. Yet beneath the surface, there's a quiet irony. The ads suggest that relief is easy, simple, and risk-free. They don't hint at the subtle dependency that can develop, nor do they explore the consequences of prolonged use. Calm is portrayed as instantaneous, portable, and socially invisible, even as society increasingly leans on the drug to navigate its own anxieties. You take the pill, and it works exactly as advertised. Shoulders loosen, thoughts decelerate. The nervous energy that has been simmering quietly begins to dissipate. Life doesn't change, but your perception of it does. Meetings, chores, traffic, and social obligations all feel manageable. The world remains complex, but you can exist in it without constant inner friction. Valium's advertising genius lies in this subtlety. It doesn't scream. It doesn't dramatize. It simply promises a smoother ride through the chaos of daily life. And it delivers. In the early 1970s, calm is not just a feeling. It's a lifestyle choice, endorsed by professionals, marketed to the masses, and quietly adopted as the standard for surviving modern existence. And you, holding that small orange bottle, are right in the middle of it, experiencing the gentle, promised relief. Valium doesn't just exist in doctors' offices and suburban kitchens. It sneaks into the broader culture too. Celebrities, always a step ahead of the public, are rumoured to use it. They move gracefully through interviews, photo shoots, and late-night talk shows with a polished serenity that seems enviable. To the average American, Valium becomes a quiet symbol of composure, sophistication, and modern self-management. You might hear it in passing references on television, whispered in a late-night comedy routine, or see it alluded to in a magazine profile. It's never the main story, it's always in the background, but the message is clear. Calm is stylish, manageable, and attainable with a discreet little pill. Valium is chic without being flashy, unassuming yet profoundly influential. The association with celebrities adds another layer of allure. If the glamorous and successful are using it, surely it must be acceptable, even aspirational. Life doesn't get easier, but you can present yourself as capable and composed, just like the people on the screen. It's a private luxury with public benefits. No one needs to know you're relying on a chemical edge, yet everyone admires your poise. In music, film, and television, Valium becomes shorthand for the pressures of modern life. Characters mention it casually, often in a knowing, understated way that signals both humour and empathy. Take a Valium becomes a phrase that implies tension is universal, but also solvable. The pill enters the cultural lexicon as both a coping mechanism and a quiet badge of participation in contemporary life. You notice the subtle psychological effect. The mere awareness that everyone else is finding relief makes your own struggles feel more manageable. Anxiety, once a private and isolating burden, is now shared indirectly through cultural touchpoints. The drug's presence in pop culture validates your experience without requiring explicit discussion. And the irony is undeniable. Valium, a product of careful chemistry and medical research, is also a cultural symbol, shaping perceptions of cool, competence, and civility. The very thing designed to quiet nerves becomes part of a social conversation about how to navigate the chaos of modern existence gracefully. At home, At work, on the street, and on screen, Valium quietly influences behavior, mood, and perception. It's not loud, it's not theatrical, but it is pervasive. The calm it provides is deeply personal, yet the cultural echo of its presence amplifies its significance. In this way, Valium becomes more than medicine. It's a cultural phenomenon, a symbol of the era, and a subtle, ubiquitous reassurance that in the face of life's relentless pressures, relief is possible, discreet, and socially acceptable. By the mid-1970s, Valium is seamlessly woven into the fabric of everyday life. It's no longer a last resort prescription for extreme cases of anxiety. It's a routine tool for managing the ordinary stresses of modern existence. The pressures of work, family, social obligations, and cultural upheaval, Vietnam, Watergate, economic uncertainty, are constant. Valium quietly eases the edges without drawing attention. You might take it in the morning before facing a tense commute, after lunch when the office hums with endless emails, or in the evening, quietly, as the kids bicker over the last cookie. The pill doesn't erase problems, but it smooths your perception of them, letting you function without spiraling. Life remains complicated, but it's now tolerable. In households across America, the presence of Valium becomes normalized. Couples keep it in the bathroom cabinet alongside aspirin. Parents discuss it in whispers at social gatherings, as if sharing a secret that everyone already knows. Office workers carry it discreetly in their briefcases. Even students, quietly struggling with exams or social pressures, find reassurance in the small orange capsule. Pharmacies and doctors support this normalization. Prescriptions are routine, refills are plentiful, and the act of taking the pill is unremarkable. There's no stigma, no shame, just quiet relief. And as more people incorporate it into daily life, the perception of anxiety itself shifts. It is no longer a personal failing, but a manageable aspect of the human experience. The lifestyle of the 1970s, fast-paced, demanding, socially complex, creates the perfect environment for Valium's quiet ubiquity. The drug becomes part of the rhythm of life, a small ritual that signals self-care, responsibility, and modern sophistication. You take it not in desperation, but as a practical tool to navigate a chaotic world. And therein lies the subtle genius. Valium is effective, discreet, and culturally accepted. It smooths over the rough edges of daily life, allowing people to appear composed, competent, and in control. The world hasn't slowed down, and the pressures haven't disappeared, but the individual can now glide through them with a new sense of calm. In this way, Valium is more than a drug. It is a lifestyle accessory, a quiet partner in navigating the challenges of the 1970s, and a marker of modern life's demands and solutions. Its presence is pervasive, its effects subtle, and its influence on both culture and personal experience profound. While Valium feels gentle, discreet, and almost invisible in daily life, there is a quieter story unfolding beneath the surface. Over weeks and months, your body begins to adjust. The same dose that once brought calm may start to feel less effective. Your muscles still relax, your thoughts still slow, but the edges of tension creep back a little faster, like an unwelcome visitor slipping in through the back door. This is tolerance. Your body adapts to the chemical presence, and the once magical smoothing effect of Valium becomes familiar. You might not even notice it immediately. Life still feels easier than without the pill, but the subtle shift is there. The dosage might remain the same, or you might feel the urge to take it a little more often. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming, just a quiet adjustment of your nervous system to this new, constant companion. Dependence can follow silently, not the kind that is loudly declared or obvious to others, but a private reliance that shapes your daily choices. You might feel uneasy facing stressful situations without it, Nights alone, tense mornings, moments of social pressure, they seem slightly sharper, slightly louder, without the familiar chemical buffer. Life hasn't changed, you have. Doctors at the time largely underestimate this. The medical consensus is that Valium is safe, non-habit forming at recommended doses, and remarkably effective. Long-term studies are limited. People trust the prescription, the physician, the science. They do not anticipate that the quiet, polite relief they've grown accustomed to could subtly shape patterns of use, emotional reliance, and behavior. And yet, despite these risks, the majority of users experience genuine benefit. Tension is reduced, sleep is improved, functionality is maintained. The pill works. It continues to ease the relentless pressures of work, family, and societal expectations. For most, the benefits outweigh the subtle and often invisible drawbacks. This creates a paradox. A drug that is profoundly helpful is also quietly shaping behavior and physiology in ways that are not immediately obvious. The calm feels natural, even effortless. The risks exist in the background, imperceptible until patterns are established over months or years. Valium's story, then, is one of duality. It is both a revolutionary tool for managing modern life and a subtle agent of change within the user's own nervous system. Calm comes at a cost that is invisible to the casual observer, but very real in the slow, cumulative rhythms of daily life. And in this understated tension lies the fascinating, quietly humbling complexity of 1970s pharmaceutical culture. In the 1970s, doctors are caught in a delicate balance. On one hand, Valium works beautifully. Patients arrive exhausted, anxious, sleepless, tense beyond reason, and leave calmer, functional, and grateful after a simple prescription. On the other hand, the very ease of the drug presents an ethical puzzle. How much is too much? How long should someone rely on a chemical buffer to navigate daily life? You can almost imagine the physician's internal dialogue. This patient is overwhelmed, but they function. I want them to function. The pill works. The side effects are minimal at this dose. The benefits outweigh the risks. It's practical, rational, and humane. There's a sense of duty to provide relief, a desire to ease suffering without unnecessary complication. Yet beneath the surface, uncertainty lingers. Long-term effects, patterns of use, and the potential for dependence are not fully understood. Some patients return for refills more frequently than expected. Some express subtle, unspoken reliance. And some doctors begin to notice the rhythm. The pill solves the immediate crisis, but leaves the patient reliant on its presence to remain calm. There's a quiet tension in this. Physicians are trained to alleviate suffering. Valium does that efficiently, reliably, and politely. But the subtle risks are diffuse, not immediately dramatic, and difficult to quantify. Unlike acute illnesses or injuries, anxiety and tension are subjective. Measuring improvement is both an art and a science. The pill makes that measurement deceptively simple. If the patient appears calmer, the treatment is considered successful. Doctors adapt. Guidelines are developed. Take as needed becomes standard language, a hedge against the unknown. Advice about dosage, duration, and follow-up is offered, but often lightly, almost casually. The culture prioritizes immediate relief over long-term vigilance, and for patients this is comforting. The doctor's confidence reinforces their own. The prescription carries authority, legitimacy, and reassurance. You take the pill, trust it, and move through the day with edges softened, unaware of the delicate ethical balancing act happening behind the prescription pad. In retrospect, this period is fascinating. It's an era where medical practice, cultural expectation, and chemical innovation converge. Doctors wield unprecedented tools to manage human emotion, yet navigate an uncertain landscape of dependence, tolerance, and subtle consequences. Valium's effective, discreet, and revolutionary, but it also quietly challenges the traditional boundaries of medical responsibility. In this quiet interplay, you glimpse the complexity of progress, relief, ethics, and unintended consequences, all entwined in the calm, polite world of 1970s medicine. By the mid-1970s, Valium is no longer just a medical tool. It shapes the way Americans think about anxiety itself. Nervous tension, once considered a personal failing or a private burden, becomes something measurable, treatable, and socially acceptable. Anxiety is no longer a vague shadow lurking in the mind. It is a condition with a solution, and the solution is tangible, discreet, and culturally sanctioned. You notice the shift in everyday conversation. Friends casually mention taking a pill after a stressful day at work or before a big family gathering. Housewives discuss it quietly over coffee. Office workers and students nod knowingly. Anxiety is normalized. It is no longer a weakness. It is something to manage, just like a cold or a backache. Valium plays a central role in this cultural transformation. By offering relief, it signals that emotional discomfort is legitimate and solvable. People begin to conceptualize stress and nervousness as problems external to themselves, mechanical issues to be fixed with a small orange capsule, rather than intrinsic flaws. Life is still stressful, but anxiety is now manageable. Magazines, television, and casual references in pop culture reinforce this perception. The narrative is subtle but persuasive. Life is demanding, but solutions exist. Take a Valium, and you can function, engage, and survive. The drug is framed not as a crutch, but as a responsible modern tool for navigating daily life. This normalization has a ripple effect. Social expectations shift quietly. Calm, composure, and emotional control are praised and emulated. People internalize the idea that nerves are temporary and manageable, and that reaching for a pill is not only acceptable, but sensible. In effect, Valium reshapes the cultural understanding of emotional life itself. Yet the ease with which anxiety is chemically managed also carries a subtle trade-off. The drug softens tension, but does not teach coping strategies. It treats symptoms, not causes. The underlying pressures, work, family, societal expectations, remain. Relief comes quietly, invisibly, but the structural sources of stress are unchanged. For the individual, this is a paradoxical experience. You feel lighter, calmer, and more capable, yet the world remains as demanding as ever. Valium smooths the edges of existence, letting you navigate complexity without collapsing under its weight. Anxiety is manageable, but only as long as the orange bottle remains close at hand. In this way, public perception evolves alongside pharmacology. Valium doesn't just relieve symptoms, it reframes the conversation about human emotion, turning anxiety from a private burden into a treatable, socially acceptable, and culturally integrated aspect of modern life. By the late 1970s, Valium has become more than a prescription. It's a quiet chemical safety net. For millions of Americans, it cushions the daily stresses that are impossible to escape. Traffic jams, overfilled schedules, marital tension, demanding bosses, and the endless minutiae of modern life. Life itself hasn't slowed down, but the pill allows you to move through it with a little more grace. You might take it mid-morning after a particularly tense commute, or late in the evening when the kids are fighting and the phone won't stop ringing. The effects are subtle but profound. Shoulders relax. Thoughts decelerate. The buzz of worry in your chest softens. It doesn't erase problems, but it makes them less pressing, more manageable. In homes across the country, Valium becomes part of the rhythm of survival. Suburban kitchens, city apartments, and small-town living rooms alike have the orange capsule as a silent companion. Its presence is almost invisible, but everyone knows it is there. Relief becomes routine, not dramatic. Life is still full of responsibilities, but there's a buffer that lets you navigate them without snapping. The social implications are striking. Calm becomes culturally valued. People notice composure in others and emulate it. The pill quietly enforces the idea that a responsible adult is capable, unflappable, and emotionally steady. The chemical support allows individuals to meet societal expectations without visible strain, preserving both social cohesion and personal dignity. And yet, this safety net has subtle consequences. Dependency can develop quietly. Tolerance grows, and the edges of calm may slowly shift, demanding slightly more frequent doses or creating a mental reliance. The rhythm of life adjusts to include the pill, often without anyone realizing how much it shapes behavior, perception, and coping mechanisms. Doctors, pharmacists, and the public participate in a silent pact. The pill is effective, convenient, and socially acceptable. Long-term risks are often overlooked or underestimated, but the immediate relief is undeniable. Anxiety and tension are no longer private burdens. They are problems that can be mitigated, managed, and socially sanctioned through a small orange capsule. In this sense, Valium functions as both a personal and cultural safety net. It softens the jagged edges of daily life, allowing people to survive, function, and maintain composure. Life's pressures remain, but the experience of them is subtly transformed. For those living in the rhythm of 1970s America, Valium quietly changes what it means to cope, to manage, and to endure. Valium's presence in 1970s America highlights subtle differences in how men and women experience stress and how society expects them to manage it. Women, often balancing home, children, and social obligations, are encouraged to maintain composure at all costs. Men, navigating work pressures and social performance, are also expected to stay calm, though admitting nerves is less socially acceptable. The pill quietly bridges these gaps, providing relief across gendered lines while reinforcing societal expectations. You notice the nuance immediately. For women, Valium eases the constant hum of domestic responsibility. It softens the anxiety that comes from managing schedules, household chores, children's moods, and the invisible weight of social judgment. Mothers, wives, and professionals alike take the pill discreetly, preserving calm and composure in a culture that rewards emotional stability above all else. Men experience a slightly different rhythm. Stress is often tied to productivity, performance, and social image. Anxiety might manifest as irritability, restlessness, or sleeplessness, but discussing it openly is rare. Valium offers a private solution, a socially invisible buffer that allows men to function without appearing weak. They can navigate offices, social events, or family interactions with a steadiness that society demands, while privately managing the tension that inevitably builds. Culturally, the pill reinforces these gendered expectations. Calm is not just desirable, it is a marker of competence and responsibility. Women are expected to handle emotional labour gracefully. Men are expected to handle external pressures stoically. Valium softens the friction, letting both sexes meet these expectations without visible strain. The psychological effect is subtle but profound. The pill validates the pressures themselves. Life is stressful, and it is reasonable to take measures to cope. Emotional turmoil is acknowledged without being publicized. The relief is personal, yet socially reinforced. You move through your day with composure, smoothing interactions and quietly softening the jagged edges of gendered responsibilities. And yet, the reliance on chemical support quietly shapes behavior. emotional resilience becomes partly pharmacological, and coping strategies are subtly outsourced to a small capsule. For the individual relief and control are real, but they come with the unspoken trade-off of subtle dependency and habituation. Valium then operates as both equalizer and enforcer. It helps people across gender lines navigate stress, while simultaneously reinforcing cultural expectations of composure, responsibility, and emotional stability. Calm becomes not just a state of mind, but a socially mediated, chemically assisted performance, quietly shaping the rhythms of everyday life. Evenings in the 1970s bring their own quiet stresses. Leftover work on the kitchen table, children still bickering over trivialities, dishes piled high, and the lingering hum of responsibilities that refuse to end. Valium becomes a gentle companion in these moments, a small, unobtrusive way to soften the edges of a day that never truly stops. You might take it after dinner, long after the house has settled into a low murmur of activity. The effect is subtle. Muscles unclench. Thoughts, which normally tumble over one another in a relentless parade, slow down. The nervous energy that kept your mind spinning softens, leaving a calm space in which sleep can finally take hold. This is not a sedative in the traditional sense. You are not immediately knocked unconscious or removed from awareness. Instead, the world becomes just a little less sharp, the hum of daily stress receding to a distant background. The transition from wakefulness to rest feels smoother, more manageable. Anxiety no longer intrudes at the edge of consciousness, poking at your chest and throat with relentless persistence. For many, Valium's presence in the evening ritual transforms not just sleep, but perception of the night itself. Bedtime is no longer a battlefield of racing thoughts and lingering tension. It is a quiet, deliberate act of self-care, a small acknowledgement that the day is done and that relief, however chemical, is justified. Cultural expectations reinforce this. Rest is not just personal, it is socially sanctioned. Taking the pill allows you to meet tomorrow's demands with composure, preserving performance while softening the toll of modern life. It's a tiny ritual of control, a way to manage both internal and external pressures without visible disruption. And yet, the ritual carries subtle consequences. Dependence can develop quietly, habituation can grow imperceptibly, and tolerance can shift the boundaries of effectiveness. Despite these risks, the immediate benefit is undeniable. Sleep comes easier, nights feel less anxious, and mornings are just slightly more manageable. Valium in the evening, then, is both practical and symbolic. It signals self-management, modernity, and quiet control over the relentless pressures of life. In a culture that prizes composure and productivity, the pill becomes a soft, reliable ally, helping millions navigate the night so they can face the day with steadier nerves and calmer hearts. While Valium provides relief, it is not without its quiet, often invisible consequences. For many, the effects are subtle: mild drowsiness, slowed reflexes, occasional memory lapses, or a faint cloud over sharpness of thought. Life continues, but sometimes with a slightly softened edge that affects decision-making, attention, or energy. You might notice these effects creeping in almost imperceptibly. A meeting that used to feel sharp and dynamic now feels slightly blurred. You misplace your keys or forget minor tasks. The day flows. Differently, not worse, not dramatic, just subtly altered. It's like wearing soft slippers on a gravel path. Comfortable, but changes how you move. Other side effects are more socially noticeable. Mood can feel flattened at times. Interactions with colleagues or family might lack their usual intensity or spontaneity. While calm is achieved, the sharpness of emotion, joy, irritation, excitement, can be muted. Life feels manageable, but the vibrancy is slightly dulled. Doctors acknowledge these risks, but in the 1970s the focus remains heavily on immediate relief. The culture prioritizes functionality, composure, and social efficiency. The pill works, and that benefit is often seen as outweighing minor cognitive or emotional side effects. Patients continue to rely on it, sometimes for years, without full awareness of the subtle costs. Yet these side effects are part of the delicate balance of modern life. Relief comes at the price of slight alteration, an invisible trade-off between tension and sharpness, between anxiety and full-bodied emotional experience. The pill does not fix life. It smooths the edges of perception, allowing survival and composure at the cost of some subtle vibrancy. And for millions of Americans, this trade-off is quietly accepted. Life feels manageable, predictable, and civilized. The pill is a tool, a buffer, a mediator between the chaotic pressures of daily life and the calm, composed self that society admires. Valium's story, then, is one of both relief and compromise. It softens the jagged edges of existence, eases tension, and allows people to function. But it also carries a quiet, persistent cost, shaping perception, cognition, and emotion in subtle ways that are easy to overlook, yet impossible to ignore entirely once noticed. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, the cultural tide begins to shift. Valium's ubiquity sparks concern among medical professionals, journalists, and the public. Reports emerge highlighting overprescription, subtle dependence, and long-term risks. The orange pill that once symbolized calm and composure is now viewed with a mixture of admiration, caution, and mild alarm. You notice the change quietly at first. Doctors become more cautious, prescribing smaller doses or shorter courses. Articles in magazines and newspapers discuss tolerance, addiction, and the subtle consequences that long-term use can create. The social conversation shifts. Calm is still desirable, but chemical reliance is no longer unambiguously celebrated. Patients themselves begin to reflect on their relationship with the pill. The convenience and relief remain undeniable, but questions arise. How much do I need it? Could I manage without it? Is calm worth the subtle costs I've experienced over the years? The cultural narrative evolves from unquestioned acceptance to cautious awareness. Pharmacies adjust as well. Prescription regulations tighten. Refills require more oversight. Doctors weigh the benefits against the emerging awareness of dependence. The societal safety net that Valium provided is now coupled with a whisper of vigilance. Relief is still available, but with a reminder that it is not a permanent or consequence-free solution. Despite this growing caution, Valium remains an important part of daily life for many. Its subtle efficacy continues to smooth the edges of stress, anxiety, and social expectation. The pill's presence in households, offices, and cultural imagination persists, but now alongside a collective acknowledgement that moderation, awareness, and responsibility are essential. And so, the decline is not dramatic, it is measured, subtle, and reflective. Valium transitions from a symbol of ubiquitous calm to a cautionary example of how even the gentlest, most socially acceptable solutions can carry hidden consequences. It's a quiet reminder that relief, convenience, and survival often come entwined with trade-offs, and that awareness, as much as the pill itself, becomes part of modern life. In this period, you sense both the power and the fragility of chemical calm. Life is still demanding, anxiety remains, but the era begins to recognize that survival requires not just pills, but knowledge, moderation, and self-awareness. Valium's legacy is both comforting and instructive, a small orange capsule that shaped an entire decade, quietly teaching lessons about relief, dependency, and the cost of calm. As the 1970s fade into the 1980s, Valium leaves a lasting imprint on American culture, medicine, and everyday life. It was more than a pill, It was a cultural touchstone, a quiet mediator between the relentless pressures of modern existence and the human desire for composure. Millions relied on it to navigate work, family, social expectations, and personal anxiety, and in doing so, it reshaped what it meant to be calm in a fast-paced, demanding world. You can still feel its subtle influence when reflecting on the decade. The orange capsule symbolized more than relief. It represented a modern solution to problems that were simultaneously universal and deeply personal. People could function, maintain appearances, and preserve dignity, all while quietly softening the internal storm. Calm became aspirational, socially validated, and chemically accessible. Yet the legacy is dual. Valium's widespread adoption also highlighted the delicate balance between relief and reliance. Subtle dependence, tolerance, and the quiet compromise of emotional sharpness were part of the story that many discovered only later. The cultural embrace of calm, once unquestioned, eventually gave way to reflection, awareness, and a more nuanced understanding of both the benefits and costs of chemical intervention. Valium's impact extended beyond medicine. It influenced social norms, gender expectations, and cultural attitudes toward anxiety and emotional management. The notion that stress was treatable and composure desirable became embedded in the fabric of daily life. People learned that life's pressures could be softened, that nervous energy could be moderated, and that survival didn't always require stoicism alone. It sometimes required chemistry, discretion, and a quiet acknowledgement of human vulnerability. In this sense, Valium's story is both historical and timeless. It reminds us that modern life has always been demanding, that humans have always sought relief, and that even subtle interventions can ripple through culture in profound ways. Its legacy is neither wholly celebratory nor cautionary. It is a reflection of the delicate dance between human resilience, societal expectation, and the persistent desire for calm. For those who lived through the era, or who study it quietly decades later, Valium represents a paradox, a small, unassuming pill that shaped daily life, social norms, and cultural understanding of anxiety, leaving behind lessons about relief, dependence, and the enduring quest for balance in an unpredictable world.